After a rainfall, a livestock farmer in Inner Mongolia was surprised to find that several black and white calves he had just purchased had actually transformed into red and white ones. Can you believe it? The cows changed color. He instantly realized that he had been cheated and unfortunately bought the legendary dyed cattle. Yes, you read that correctly, dyed cattle. We previously reported about unscrupulous business paintings white pigs to look like black pigs in order to fetch higher prices. Since pigs can be altered in appearance, why couldn't more expensive calves be transformed as well? In fact, the practice of dyeing cattle is not something new in China. In August 2023, ChinaCourt.org reported a similar incident. On April 10, 2023, the plaintiff purchased a calf from the defendant at the Yihuta cattle market in Tongliao City, Inner Mongolia. He brought the calf home for 10,900 yuan, approximately 1,540 US dollars. The plaintiff kept the calf in an outdoor environment. He noticed that the area below the calf's eye, which should have been white, gradually turned brown. After a few rain showers, this became even more apparent. He realized that the calf had been intentionally dyed to inflate its market value. Unable to contact the defendant, the plaintiff filed a lawsuit seeking a refund of the purchase price, the return of the calf to the defendant, and reimbursed for the cost of care during this period. The court investigation revealed that the buyer was a cattle trader from Xiping City, Jilin Province. Since he resided in another province, he explicitly stated that he did not wish to appear in court for the litigation and consistently denied any involvement in the calf transaction with the plaintiff. After court mediation, the defendant agreed to pay the plaintiff a price difference of 1,500 yuan. The calf in question stayed with the plaintiff, and the plaintiff taking responsibility for the care expenses. It seems these incidents are not isolated cases. In 2021, it was reported that a livestock farmer spent 17,500 yuan, approximately 2,472 US dollars, to purchase what was claimed to be a fourth-generation purebred Simmental cow. After raising it for 2 months, the farmer discovered that its seemingly all-white cow had actually developed 2 red eye patches, a characteristic typically associated with third-generation Simmental cattle. Why did the calf's fur change color? It turned out that the seller painted over the calf's red eye patches with white to deceive buyers and to pass it off as fourth-generation cow to fetch a higher price. The practice of dyeing cattle is not a recent phenomenon. Back in 2001, Chinese media reported an incident in Tongliao City, Inner Mongolia, where a farmer had obtained multicolored dairy cows from outside the region. She used pigments to make them resemble pure black and white dairy cows before selling them in the market. Some people noticed unusual features in their appearances, such as their fur color and eyes, and reported the matter to the local business authorities. Upon on-site inspection, it was determined that these cows had indeed been dyed. The farmer was fined 10,000 yuan as a penalty. The local business department explained that due to the significant growth of the dairy industry in Inner Mongolia in recent years, there have been incidents involving fraudulent dairy cows from time to time. Did you all catch that? These schemes by cattle sellers have been around for over 2 decades. People have known about them for a while and they continue to persist. That's why many bloggers are creating videos to educate everyone on how to spot dyed cattle.
Before everyone buys cattle, you must take a close look and be cautious not to end up with dyed cattle. Some unscrupulous merchants dye the fur of the cattle to make more money and deceive buyers. Many livestock farmers have already fallen into this scam. When buying cattle, it's essential to observe carefully. You can use alcohol to clean the fur or part the hair to see the color of the skin and the roots of the hair underneath to confirm whether it's a dyed cow or not.
Not only cattle, but also many small pets are being dyed and then sold. Vibrantly colored and fluorescent ornamental fish are widely popular. But do you think these colors are natural for these small fish? No. In reality, these fish are dyed by businesses. In the video, you can see transparent colored fish being injected with various pigments using a syringe, resulting in visually stunning and attractive appearance. Unfortunately, these dyed fish do not live long at all. The process of dyeing fish is cruel and harmful. In milder cases, it makes a fish more susceptible to illness and significantly shorten their lifespan. In several cases, the dyeing process can lead to the death of small fish. I bought various colored glass fish before, and within a few days of bringing them home, most of them died, and the remaining few gradually lost their color. In less than a month, they were all gone. I spent money, and the fish died, thinking it was my fault for not taking care of them properly. It was only later that I found out I had bought fake fish, died fish. No matter how well I cared for them, I was only prolonging their lives before from the moment they were died. It was a tragic beginning. Dyed fish, also known as artificially colored fish, are subjected to 4 common methods of coloring. These methods are ranked from most harmful to least harmful based on the level of damage inflicted. They are dye injection, immersion, laser coloring, and color enhancing feed. Among them, dye injection is the cruelest and most inhumane method of dyeing. As the saying goes, there's no harm if there's no buying and selling. It's precisely the curiosity of people that has given rise to the market for dyed fish, making them increasingly popular. People continue to buy them even though they often die shortly after purchase, and the cycle repeats itself. This continuous cycle has sustained the enduring popularity of the dyed fish market. It's not just live animals that are dyed. In fact, the practice of dyeing meat, seafood, and various vegetables to enhance the appearance and increase their market value is also quite common in China. Yellow croaker is one of the distinctive fish species in the East China Sea, known for its tender and flavorful meat, making it a favorite among diners. When selecting it in the market, the darker and more yellow the color, the more attractive it appears to buyers. In July 2023, during an inspection in Liuqiao District, Taizhou City, Zhejiang Province, market regulators discovered dyed yellow croakers being sold. These dyed yellow croakers exhibit a noticeable yellow tint when touched with fingers. Upon questioning at the scene, the vendor, Mr. Lee, admitted to using gardenia yellow water to paint the fish's body. His intention was to make the frozen yellow croakers appear fresher, more yellow, and shiny to boost sales. Subsequently, law enforcement officers found 2 glass bottles containing dark red liquid at Mr. Lee's temporary residence. After conducting tests on the liquid inside the bottles and the pigment samples from the yellow croakers, it was confirmed that they both contain alkaline orange 2. As mentioned, alkaline orange 2 is an industrial dye primarily used for coloring textiles, leather products, and wood products. Research indicates that excessive ingestion, inhalation, or skin contact with this substance can lead to acute and chronic toxic injuries. Alkaline orange 2 is a non-edible substance expressly prohibited from being added to food according to food safety regulations. Previously in Harbin, Heilongjiang Province, there were reports of individuals at markets using unknown liquids to dye fish, selling them at higher prices by posing as wild-caught fish. Salmon is one of the most popular fish on dining tables, but did you know that the salmon you're eating might have been dyed? The common perception of salmon meat is that it has an orange-red color with distinct white fat streaks, but only wild Atlantic salmon naturally exhibit this orange-red hue. This is because they primarily feed on crustaceans like krill, which contain a compound called carotenoid, making the freshly pink-orange color. Farm-raised salmon do not have the same natural diet and environment as their wild counterparts, so their flesh is originally grayish-white. But this color doesn't have the same visual appeal, and the price of farm-raised salmon is usually only about 1/3 of wild salmon. As a result, many fish farmers add chemical colorants to the feed to artificially color the fish's flesh, passing them off as wild salmon to maximize profits. Farm-raised salmon often contain higher levels of saturated fats, calories, pollutants, and antibiotics, making them nutritionally inferior to their wild counterparts. Due to the demanding conditions required for farming salmon, there are only a few places in China where it can be cultivated. Therefore, many Chinese restaurants that serve salmon are more likely to use artificially farmed rainbow trout as a substitute. While the overall appearance of the two is easily distinguishable, the flesh of the rainbow trout raised with added colorants can mimic the appearance of salmon meat. It is also convincing that even seafood experts may have difficulty telling them apart based on visual inspection alone. So not only is this fish not salmon, but it has also been dyed during the farming process, making it a case of double deception. However, there are also unscrupulous businesses that directly use artificial food coloring to dye salmon flesh, making it appear redder and more appealing. Not only salmon, but also other types of fish have been reported to be dyed artificially. There was a previous report that a seafood market in Guangzhou had vendors applying a carcinogenic artificial dye commonly known as carmine to fish, enhancing their appearance. Law enforcement officers witnessed several workers using brushes to continuously apply the red dye on the fish at the scene. A seller of the fresh fish explained that if the fish turned white due to extended storage, nobody would buy them, so they had to be discarded. Some vendors resort to dyeing them to continue selling and making a profit. Experts have pointed out that excessive additions of carmine in food can potentially lead to poisoning and digestive issues affecting liver metabolism. Therefore, food safety standards explicitly prohibit the addition of synthetic colorants carmine to meat products and seafood. In fact, the use of carmine is not limited to seafood products. It's also known practice in the processed meat industry. In January 2022, the Chengdu Market Supervision Bureau released a video documenting a law enforcement inspection at a clandestine processing site for sausage and pork products. The scene captured in the video was appalling, with workers publicly using carmine to dye pork meat. The Chengdu Chonglai Market Supervision Bureau received a tip-off from the public about an illegal meat processing facility in the rural area of Chonglai. Acting on the information provided, they arrived at this processing plant located in a rural courtyard. They first noticed a white truck parked on the road outside the courtyard with some items in woven bags labeled pork tongue. Upon inquiry, it was revealed that these were all raw materials of pork head meat they had acquired. Upon entering the processing workshop, they discovered a highly contaminated and dirty environment with many raw pork materials hanging on shelves. Some pork was also placed in large containers for pickling, and it was equally unclean. During the inspection, a worker placed a pig's head into a plastic bucket filled with red dye. The worker informed the law enforcement officers that this dye was carmine using for coloring the pork. The worker even mentioned that they followed instructions for the correct ratio, but as mentioned earlier, carmine is not allowed to be added to meat products. It remains unclear what instruction this worker was referring to regarding the use of carmine. They then proceeded to the smoked meat processing area. Upon opening the door, a pungent odor struck them immediately. Inside the small, dimly lit room, there was a pile of burning firewood on the ground, which was used for smoking the meat. The so-called fire safety equipment consisted of a small fire extinguisher at the entrance. The firewood used for burning was made from some construction debris. Some of it was even painted, which would likely emit toxic gases when burned. Something even more amusing happened next.
Making food is about having a conscience. This is something people eat.
We're doing everything very cleanly. It's all good.
You still think this is good?
Yes, I'm just not very humble about it.
They then arrived at what was referred to as the cold storage room, which had a particularly foul odor. All the meat was placed on very low wooden shelves. When asked about the refrigeration, the owner admitted to having 2 refrigerating units, but said they weren't currently in use. This time, he had acknowledged that the hygiene conditions were a bit poor. Upon inquiry, it was found that this meat processing facility had a daily sales volume of over 500 kilograms, primarily sold to roadside vendors who sell braised meat dishes.
Do you have a business license and a food production permit?
Other shops have them.
I'm asking if you have them. You're involved in food production and processing. No, you guys won't issue them to me. So, does your production environment meet the requirements? Where do you source your goods from? They all come from reputable suppliers. Do you have the necessary invoices and qualifications? Others definitely have them. It's not about whether others have them or not. It's about whether you have them or not.
Later, law enforcement officers discovered that only a few outstanding debts were recorded on a few pieces of paper, while all the other cash transactions had no documentation. Subsequently, law enforcement sealed off this meat processing illicit operation. Seeing this, are you surprised by the current state of food safety in China? Unfortunately, this is the reality we face. When people's morals deteriorate to the point where they no longer feel shame for their wrongdoings, it becomes a serious issue. Judging by the behavior of the owner of this illicit operation, it is evident that he has no guilt or moral conscience about his actions. He even seems to consider them justified. And what about the small vendors who buy products from him? They may share a similar mindset. This is why counterfeit and adulterated goods, as well as toxic food products, are so prevalent in China. The fundamental problem lies in the corruption of people's moral values. Look, this pork vendor is shamelessly coloring the pork, and it was captured on camera by a passerby. The person who shared this video online commented, "I've stumbled upon a live broadcast from the scene. Don't you have a conscience?" In June 2023, the Market Supervision Department in Xiamen, China, uncovered a major case of counterfeit beef. These street vendors in Jieping Road in Shimin District claimed to be selling authentic beef at a significantly lower price than the normal market rates. Upon investigation, it was revealed that the fake beef being sold at these 3 stores actually came from the same supplier. This case involved a cross-regional full-chain network of counterfeit beef distribution. Since 2022, they have been using processed pork from slaughtered sows subjected to methods like air dyeing and coloring with ox blood to mimic beef. They also hired drivers to transport it to Xiamen for distribution. The entire case involved 11 retail stores selling counterfeit beef, with transactions exceeding 10 million yuan. Enforcement officers also seized over 1,200 kilograms of suspected counterfeit beef at the scene. Not only are meat products counterfeited, but also the chili pepper sprayed with red paint that we reported in the past. In fact, counterfeit chili noodles are even more serious. Chinese media reported that at a chili noodle processing facility in Shanxi province, undercover investigators discovered that it was mixing corn husk into the chili to produce chili noodles and using a coloring agent called red oil for dyeing. Test reveals that the so-called red oil dye contained 29% of the industrial dye Sudan Red 4. Sudan Red is scientifically known as Sudan, is an industrial dye primarily used in industries such as textiles, printing, painting, and processing. The International Agency of Research on Cancer categorizes Sudan 4 as a Group 3, meaning it is possibly carcinogenic to humans. Consequently, as an industrial dye, Sudan 4 is strictly prohibited from being added to food products. Sudan 4 is familiar to many Chinese people, mainly due to the red heart duck egg incident that occurred in 2006. According to CCTV's weekly quality report on November 12, 2006, some duck eggs in Beijing markets were labeled as red heart from Baiyandian. They claimed that the eggs were produced by ducks freely grazing by the Baiyandian waters, where the ducks ate small fish and shrimp. But local duck farmers argue that these so-called red heart duck eggs did not actually come from Baiyandian. Genuine Baiyandian ducks' eggs had yellowish-orange yolks, as the ducks primarily consume corn feed. Following CCTV's investigation, it was discovered that in some duck farms and egg production bases in Pingshan County and Jingxi County, Hebei Province, a substance known as red dye was added to duck feed. This resulted in duck eggs with a vibrant red yolks. The more red dye added, the redder the yolks became. Locals refer to these eggs as dyed-infused eggs and never consume them. After testing by the Food Safety Research Institute of the China Academy of Inspection and Quarantine, it was found that these duck egg samples contained Sudan 4, with the highest concentration reaching 0.137 milligrams per kilogram. From then on, almost all Chinese people have become aware that Sudan 4 is a potentially carcinogenic substance. After this incident was reported by CCTV, it created a nationwide uproar. Almost everyone in the country started discussing Sudan 4. No one dared to consume red heart duck eggs anymore. Even other food products that were dyed red were abandoned by the public. But today, Sudan 4 has once again emerged as a dye on various food items. These unscrupulous traders are likely aware that Sudan 4 is carcinogenic, but they continue to use it as a food coloring. The recent developments highlight a concerning trend where the pursuit of profit appears to override fundamental human values, raising serious ethical questions. In fact, the fundamental reasons for the rampant counterfeit goods and unethical business practices in China is the existence of the Chinese Communist Party, which is skilled in deceit and manipulation. Since its establishment, the CCP has systematically undermined the moral standards of society, leading to a situation where officials, propaganda institutions, and individuals from top to bottom engage in deception, mistrust, and mutual dishonesty. Growing up in such an environment, it is incredibly challenging for people to maintain basic honesty, integrity. The resilience of individuals who maintain their faith amidst challenging circumstances is increasingly viewed as a key factor in upholding integrity and preserving authentic human values in the face of corruption.